We all knew it was coming, but here we are. Jayden Daniels is the week 1 starter for the Commanders. The new era in Washington has arrived for the 2nd overall pick, and I am stoked. But first, the football season is almost here, and you know that means that I'm trying to get out to some games, specifically up to Landover to watch the Commanders. Personally, the one game I'm most looking forward to is that Bears game up in October that I definitely want to be at. And to get tickets, I'm going to use SeatGeek, today's video sponsor. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 ticketing app. There are over 70,000 events on SeatGeek, whether it's sporting events, concerts, or festivals. Obviously, I'm just planning on going to a bunch of football games, but baseball is also still in right now, and you have a ton of great options of artists that are on tour, like Hozier or Zach Bryan. SeatGeek puts all of the tickets across the web in one place, so you actually know whether or not you're getting a good deal. Each ticket is rated 1 through 10. Green is good and red is bad. And every ticket is backed by SeatGeek's buyer guarantee. And of course, you already know we have you guys a code. You can use code JD for $20 off at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek with code JD. Make sure you click that link down in the description to download the app, and let's get right back to the video. Anyone that has been paying to the Commanders this offseason definitely isn't surprised by the news that Jayden Daniels is the week 1 starter. It is usually expected. When you take a quarterback that high, that's the hope for them to start week 1, but Dan Quinn wanted to make him earn it, and he did. He's been taking the first team reps, and he's looked good in his first preseason game. He didn't play much, which is pretty normal for a rookie QB. He ended up just going 3 of 4. He had that long 42-yard pass to De'Ami Brown that got us a little excited, and then he also scored on a little short 3-yard touchdown on a zone read. So he was able to kind of get his feet wet. Then we saw him play more in that second game. He went 10 of 12. He had 78 yards. And I think more than anything, he just did a good job getting rid of the ball fast, which maybe is just more of a wanting the offense to be very vanilla. And that's it. Now he's the week 1 starter, and they're not even going to play him in the 3rd preseason game against the Patriots. At this point, I am confident enough to say that Jayden Daniels should be the starting quarterback. You know, he showed me enough during the preseason that he should be starting. You know, he looked good. He looked experienced. This is a guy that got 5 years in college, so I'm glad that he did. It was a very vanilla scheme, and I think that's just what you're going to get in the preseason. So we're going to see how that kind of changes week 1. You know, this is going to change a lot for him, you know, week to week, but I think he's deserved that spot. He should be starting week 1. He's proven that, and I think it's the right call. Now, if you're looking for one big worry for Jayden Daniels, I think it's pretty simple. The weapons around him are a big concern. There just isn't a ton of depth there, and trading away Jahan Dotson doesn't exactly help that. Washington ended up not just trading Jahan, but trading him to a divisional rival, the Eagles. Commanders traded him with a 5th-round pick for a 3rd and 2 7ths. The trade makes sense for the Eagles for sure. Now they have that wide receiver 3 they need. He can play alongside A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, so the attention definitely won't be on him. It's funny though, because he's also not the only Penn State guy that played for a division rival and now is on the Eagles. Obviously, Saquon Barkley did the same. I do think the trade makes a ton of sense for the Eagles, and I think it could be a really good thing for Jahan too. He gets a nice change of scenery, and that's a really good spot to succeed. Hopefully, he can continue to develop there and just not have a ton of attention on him on a pretty talented roster. As for Washington, it's a little more complicated, I think. This is a guy that Washington did use a 1st-round pick on in 2022, 16th overall, and he showed some promise as a rookie with about 500 yards, and then he was supposed to make that jump in year 2, and he stayed just right around 500 again in that brand new Eric Bieniemy offense. Now Dan Quinn comes in with a whole new staff and even new ownership now with Josh Harris, and Dotson just isn't their guy. You know, they didn't draft him, and he hasn't been very good in training camp reportedly. I mean, he has been playing late into preseason games. That was just a really bad sign to start with, and then it started to become pretty clear that he wasn't going to be a top receiver, and that in its own is concerning because the wide receiver room isn't that good, and that is also the biggest worry for Jayden is the weapons around him just aren't that good. And yes, you have Terry McLaurin, who is a very good receiver. After that, it's De'Ami Brown has made some big strides apparently. Good for him. Olamide Zaccheaus I do think is a great signing. thing. You know, I've been a fan of him for a while, watched him a lot at UVA, and he's had success in the league already and knows Dan Quinn. Then you have Luke McCaffrey. He's a name to watch, and Jamison Crowder and Byron Pringle, but it ain't pretty. Tight end, you have Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott, who I am excited to watch this season. But overall, that's just really not a good collection of weapons. So you wouldn't think that they'd have the luxury to trade away talented receivers. Jahan Dotson is a tough guy to really evaluate because he was a really good touchdown machine his first year in Washington. It was very exciting after his rookie year. You know, it looked like he was poised for a really good year too, and then that Eric Bieniemy offense just sucked. Unfortunately for him, he hasn't had any stability at quarterback, which is what we've seen from pretty much everybody that's played for Washington, especially Terry McLaurin, who's have to deal with all kinds of stuff of different quarterbacks just coming in and out and just been a complete mess. I think he's a guy with a lot of talent. It says a lot though, like he just hasn't been that good, and I think it says a lot when you trade him to a division rival. You usually try not to trade with your division rival at all, but if you have a legitimate player, an actual guy, and you're trading him to a division rival, you must think very, very poorly of that player to send him to a division rival, or at least you're getting a ton of capital back that you wouldn't from another team, and I'm finding that hard to believe. The fact that they gave up a fifth with Jahan is insane. That should not have been a situation where they gave up a fifth too. This guy was a first-round pick. He's had back-to-back 500-yard seasons. He's struggled, yes, but giving up a fifth rounder to only get a third back and then 2 sevenths is crazy. I just think this was a terrible trade for Washington. I'm not against the idea of trading Jahan Dotson. I understand he hasn't been that good. Maybe he needed to go. That's fair, but you did not get a lot back for a guy that hasn't been absolutely terrible on the field and was just a first-round pick not that long ago. The wide receiver room in all just needs more bodies in there, and so if you're trading Jahan, I really do think you have another plan. I think maybe they are going hard after Brandon Ayuk. It's very possible that they try to land him. Obviously, he already has that rapport. He's good friends with Jayden Daniels, and so I think that's possible, but would you trade Jahan before you really know you have an Ayuk trade? I don't know. A lot about this is just really weird. I don't know how to feel about this trade. I think Jahan is a talented guy. I just don't think Washington was the right fit. I don't think he was, turning into a very good developed player, and these guys didn't draft him, so it's hard for them to really care when it comes to that. Jahan Dotson is part of pretty elite company. The complete failure first-round picks of the Ron Rivera era. Rivera had 4 first-round picks in Washington, and all 4 were complete swings and misses. The first one's hard to blame him, though. Chase Young at 2. He was by far the best pick there. Most people thought he was the best player in the draft. I agree, which that's fair. I mean, you can't blame him for that. He was even great and won Defensive Rookie of the Year. Didn't play as well the next season, though, and then tore his ACL last year. He was traded to the Niners, and now he's a Saint. It ended up just being a really disappointing stretch for him with the Commanders. But again, it's hard to blame Ron there, but you can for the others. Maybe the one that I hate the most, Jamin Davis at 19. If you wanted a linebacker that bad, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was the top one on the board, and everyone knew it. They took Jamin instead. They 100% should have taken Christian Darrisaw, and that is a top frustrated I've been at any pick. Now, JOK and Darrisaw, who I did get to see a ton of Virginia Tech, I knew he was going to dominate in the league, and now both are on big extensions, and Jamin just isn't that good. 2022, Jahan Dotson, after trading down from 11 to the Saints, who then grabbed a great receiver in Chris Olave. I mean, imagine if we could have paired up that Ohio State duo of Olave and McLaurin, but no, traded down for Jahan. Then last year, Emmanuel Forbes, who has been awful when Christian Gonzalez was the expected top corner and was right there. But no, couldn't go with the consensus. That's 0 for 4. Just absolutely ridiculous decision making. Don't get me wrong, I'm thankful for Ron Rivera and what he did. More than anything, he came into Washington, and I do think he changed the culture. It was very toxic with the Dan Snyder culture. We weren't too far removed from Bruce Allen and all of that. He did a lot for the culture, but he did not do a lot of good on the field. And he did not do a lot of good when it came to drafting players and putting together a good team. It was a complete mess. The team was not good on the field, and then you look back at the drafts, and these are things that are still affecting Washington to this day. I still can't believe it that we took Jamin Davis. I wanted Christian Darrisaw so bad. That dude was a freak at Virginia Tech. I remember watching him all the time. And if you really had to go after a linebacker, you could have taken JOK, but they didn't. They went after Jamin Davis for some reason. They thought they outsmarted everybody. They didn't. The next year, they traded trade down and don't take Chris Olave, one of the top wide receivers in the draft, to instead take Jahan Dotson. They thought they outsmarted everybody. They didn't. I get it. They got some good capital back. Cole Turner came back in that trade. Brian Robinson's obviously your starter. You got Sam Howell, who ended up doing something now. So, I mean, you got some good players trading out of that pick, but you should have stuck. You should have taken Olave. And then you just look at Emmanuel Forbes, and it's like, what were you thinking? No one in the right mind thought Emmanuel Forbes was the pick there. They didn't even bring him in on like a top 30 visit or whatever. They're like, oh, we felt so confident in him. We didn't need to. It's like, dude, Christian Gonzalez was right there, who had dropped down the board and people couldn't believe he was still there. And then New England got him. It's just absolutely insane the way they thought they had outsmarted everybody. Chase was a home run pick. You had to do that. I have no blame there. But they just tried to outsmart everybody, and the picks were terrible. And that has set this organization back so much now. But hopefully that all changes with a new regime, new coach. Hopefully Dan Quinn has the right ideas. Post Ron Rivera era, of course, the next first round pick is, of course, Jayden Daniels. And get a load of this. Jayden Daniels is the 7th different starting quarterback for Washington over the last 7 years. As a fan, I can assure you that it has been brutal every step of the way. It was Kirk Cousins in 2017. And at that point, you know, quarterback had actually been pretty stable for a minute. We ended up letting Kirk walk. We traded for Alex Smith, and then he had that gruesome leg injury, even though he showed a ton of promise before then. Case Keenum was the veteran that came in 2019 until Dwayne Haskins took over. Haskins started week 1 in 2020 and got cut later that season. What's really bizarre when you look back at who started all the week 1s is actually that Taylor Heineke has played the most games for Washington over the past 7 years, and he's never started week 1. In 2021, Ryan Fitzpatrick got hurt in the opener. Heineke took over. Then Carson Wentz was the 2022 starter, but he just wasn't good. So Heineke ended up coming in. Sam Howell, of course, played the finale that season and was the 2023 week 1 starter. And now you have Jayden Daniels. It's been a long, painful journey. I will not lie. Alex Smith gave me a flash, and then RG3 was the last and really only time in my life where I thought Washington had their future long-term guy. And man, I hope more than anything that Jayden Daniels is now. Just please, please let it be Jayden.